My name is Renata Voss. I'm 41 years old, and I manage the front operations of a dental practice in Sylvania, Ohio, scheduling, billing, the part of healthcare that nobody thinks about until something goes wrong. I am good at keeping things running. I am good at staying calm when the room around me isn't. I learned that skill early. I was the oldest of three, and our house growing up ran on a schedule that my mother maintained with a kind of quiet determination I didn't fully understand until I was running one of my own. By my mid-20s I had learned that the person who tracked the details was usually the person nobody thanked, and I had made my peace with that. It was a useful thing to be. It kept the pieces from falling. I did not know until this past spring that I had been practicing that skill my entire adult life, specifically for one Thursday night in Bancroft Hills. I married Dean Calloway 14 months ago. We met through a mutual friend at a retirement party neither of us wanted to attend, and what I liked about him at first was how steady he seemed. Not flashy. Not performing. He owned his home outright, raised his daughter mostly alone after his first marriage ended, and carried himself like a man who had already decided who he was. I found that restful. After my own divorce, 4 years of rebuilding on my own, restful was what I needed. His daughter Priya was 19 when we married. She had her father's composure and her mother's gift for making a room feel smaller than it actually was. She was never rude to me outright. She never said anything I could point to directly. What she did was more precise than that. She described the house to guests as if I had just arrived, referred to her father's preferences as if they had been negotiated before I existed, and arranged small logistics, seating, serving order, the placement of things on shelves, in ways that consistently placed me at the edge of the picture rather than inside it. Dean noticed none of this. Or he noticed and decided it was easier not to name it. I could not yet tell which. What I brought to this marriage was not abstract. Before we married, Dean's house needed work. The kitchen was 20 years behind, the master bath had a slow leak that had gone unaddressed long enough to damage the subfloor, and the back deck had boards that gave underfoot in a way that made me nervous every time I crossed it. Dean had the equity in the house but not the liquid cash to address all of it at once. I had savings. Not a windfall, money I had put together carefully over 4 years of working full-time and living lean after my divorce. We sat at his kitchen table one evening and I transferred $74,300 into our joint account. He signed papers. I signed papers. An attorney filed a co-ownership amendment with the Lucas County Recorder's Office. It was quiet and practical and felt like the right thing to do. I want to be clear that I did not do this to hold anything over him. I did it because I was going to live in this house and I wanted it to be right, and because I believed that was what you did when you were building something together. I kept a copy of the amendment in a manila folder in my desk drawer. The folder had a laminated tab that had cracked at the corner from being opened too many times. I'd reviewed those documents often during the process, checking figures, confirming language. By the time we closed on the amendment, the tab was already creased and splitting. I moved the folder into the top dresser drawer in the bedroom when I moved in, and I did not think about it again for almost a year. I had been carrying the household in ways that were real but hard to itemize. I was the one who tracked the service schedules, the furnace filter, the water softener salt, the pest control rotation. I was the one who noticed when the refrigerator's ice maker started cycling too loudly and called the repair company before Dean registered there was a problem. I managed the grocery budget, coordinated the cleaners who came twice a month, and handled every piece of mail that required a response. Priya lived at home while she finished her second year at the community college 30 minutes away. She ate the meals I planned, used the Wi-Fi account I had set up in my name, and left her laundry in the machine in a way that required whoever came next to deal with it. I dealt with it without saying anything because I had decided that was the shape of this season and it would pass. That spring, I invited my family to dinner. My mother drove up from Perrysburg, an hour each way, and my sister came with her husband. It was the first time I had hosted them at the Bancroft Hills house. I wanted them to see where I lived now. I wanted them to feel welcome in a place that was also mine. I cooked for 3 days in pieces. A braise that needed time, a salad that needed the right dressing, a bread I had learned from my mother's recipe years ago and hadn't made since before my first marriage ended. I set the table with the good plates. I pressed the linen napkins and folded them into the glasses the way my mother had shown me when I was young. I adjusted the lighting in the dining room, moved the centerpiece twice until the proportions felt right, and stood at the far end of the room to check the table from the angle my mother would see it when she walked in. I realized as I lit the candles an hour before they arrived, genuinely looking forward to this. Not performing anticipation, actually looking forward to it, the way I hadn't allowed myself to look forward to something in this house for longer than I wanted to admit. My mother came through the door and said the house was beautiful. My sister hugged me in the entryway and said I looked like myself again. Her husband shook Dean's hand and asked about the deck. Priya appeared from upstairs, already dressed, and stood near the kitchen with a glass of water, watching. The first hour was good. The food was on the table, and it was warm, and there was real conversation. My brother-in-law asking Dean about the house's history, my mother telling a story about my grandmother's cooking that made everyone laugh. I sat at my end of the table and felt something in my shoulders come down that I hadn't realized had been held. It was during the main course that Priya spoke. "My dad doesn't really like that spice blend," she said. "Not to me." To my mother, pleasantly, with the mild concern of someone offering useful context. "We usually use something simpler. He just doesn't always say anything." My mother looked at me. I said, "He's had this dish 4 times since January and asked for the recipe twice." Priya tilted her head. "He's just being polite. He does that." There was a pause. My sister set her fork down slightly too carefully. Dean said nothing. The second comment came 15 minutes later, when my brother-in-law asked about the kitchen renovation, how it had come together, what decisions had been made. Priya answered. She described the layout, the cabinet choice, the countertop material, the way the lighting over the island had been selected. She described all of it correctly. She described none of it as having involved me in any way. "Renata actually drove most of that process," my sister said. Her voice was pleasant. She was looking at Priya. "Sure, she was here for some of it," Priya said. She took a sip of water. "But my dad had the vision for what he wanted." I said, "I funded the renovation." The table went quiet. Dean looked at me. Something shifted in his expression, not quite displeasure but the precursor to it. "Renata," he said. "It's accurate," I said. "This isn't the time. Your daughter is describing the house as if I don't live in it." He put his hand flat on the table. "This is still my house. You don't get a vote on how we talk about it." The silence that followed had weight. My mother's hands were in her lap. My sister was very still. My brother-in-law was looking at his plate. I heard the furnace cycle on somewhere below us, a sound I knew because I had been the one to schedule its last service. Priya said to my mother in the same pleasant tone she had used all evening. "She sometimes has a hard time adjusting. My dad has done so much for her. It's just, some people are ungrateful even when they don't mean to be." My mother looked at Priya for a long moment. Then she looked at me. My sister said, "Excuse me?" Dean said, "Let's not." "No," my sister said. "Say that again." "I just meant," Priya said, "that it's an adjustment. Blended families are hard. I'm not criticizing anyone." "You said ungrateful," my sister said. "You said that to her mother." "I think it came out wrong," Priya said. "Did it?" my sister said. Dean said, "This is exactly why I said this wasn't the time." He was looking at me. "You brought something up at the table in front of guests, and now look where we are." "Where we are," I said, "is your daughter telling my mother that I'm ungrateful in a house I co-own." "You don't co-own anything," Dean said. "Your name is on a document. That's not the same thing." Something went still in my chest. Not anger, not the urge to correct him. Something more like a door that had been standing half open, finally swinging the rest of the way shut. I did not say anything else. I picked up my water glass and I drank from it and I set it back down. My family left at 9:30. My mother hugged me in the doorway for a long time and didn't say anything. My sister hugged me and said, quietly, "Call me tonight." I told her I would. Dean and Priya went upstairs. I heard the television in Priya's room come on. I cleared the table. I put the leftover food in containers and labeled them and put them in the refrigerator. I washed the good plates by hand. I wiped down the counters. The kitchen smelled of the braise and of dish soap, and the quiet was the particular kind that comes after a room has held more people than it holds now. I turned off the dining room light. I walked to the bedroom and opened the top dresser drawer. The manila folder was where I had left it. The laminated tab was still cracked. I took the folder out and carried it to the kitchen table. I sat down. I did not open it yet. I waited until the television upstairs went quiet. I waited another 20 minutes past that. I looked at the clock on the microwave, Thursday, 11:14 p.m. Then I opened the folder. Dean came downstairs at 11:40. He was in a t-shirt and socks, the way he always looked when he decided a conversation needed to happen on his terms. He saw me at the table. He saw the folder. He pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. "You embarrassed me," he said. "I told the truth," I said. "At dinner. In front of your family. Your daughter told my mother I was ungrateful. In front of my family. Priya is 20 years old. She's 19, I said. And she knows exactly what she's doing." He looked at the folder. "What is that?" "You know what it is. Renata." His voice had the warmth that meant he wanted the conversation to end. "You have to understand that this house has a history. Priya grew up here. I built this. The document you're referring to is a legal formality. It doesn't change what this place is." "You said I don't co-own anything," I said. "That my name on a document isn't the same thing." I said that in the heat of. "I want to understand what you meant," I said. "Because either I co-own this property or I don't. One of those things has to be true." He sat back. "You don't have to make this into something bigger than it is." "No say," I said. "That's what you told me. In front of my mother and my sister. I have no say in your house." I was frustrated. "I understand you were frustrated." I reached into the folder. I pulled out a single sheet of paper, the co-ownership amendment, filed with the Lucas County Recorder's Office, both our signatures, the notary stamp visible in the lower right corner. I set it on the table. Then I picked up my phone, opened the county recorder's app, and navigated to the property record for the Bancroft Hills address. The screen showed the registered owners, Dean Calloway and Renata Voss Calloway. I turned the phone so he could see it. Then I laid the printed document flat beside the phone, parallel to the edge of the table, so both were visible at once. The assessed value on the county record read $618,500. My name appeared directly beneath his. Dean looked at both for a long moment. He did not touch either of them. "You told me I had no say," I said. "You said it in front of my family, after your daughter called me ungrateful to my mother's face, in a house I put $74,300 into so we could live in it together. That's what happened tonight." He started to speak. I continued. "Whatever this house is to you and to Priya, whatever history it carries, my name is on the deed. Not as a formality. As a matter of public record." I looked at him steadily. "And what I'm going to do now is decide what that means." He was quiet for a long time. He looked at the document, then at the phone screen, then at a point somewhere past my left shoulder. Priya appeared at the top of the stairs. She looked down at the kitchen table. She looked at her father's face. She did not come down. I stood up. I did not take the document or the phone. I left them both on the table and walked upstairs. Behind me, I heard nothing. 4 months later, I am living in my sister's spare bedroom in a house 20 minutes from Sylvania. The folder lives in the center console of my car now, between the registration and the insurance card. I open it sometimes when I'm waiting in a parking lot. Not to look at the amendment, just to confirm the weight of it, the specific texture of the cracked laminate tab under my thumb. I put $74,300 into that house. My name is still on the deed. The mediation process has been slower than I expected and faster than I feared. Dean sent me a text 3 weeks after I left. It said, "We should talk about the house situation before this goes further." I read it in the parking lot of the dental practice, sitting in my car before my shift. I set the phone face down on the passenger seat and went inside. Something settled in me that doesn't have a clean name. Not anger, not grief, not the particular bitterness I expected. Something more like clarity, the kind that comes when you finally stop mistaking a wall for a door. My sister says I seem lighter. My mother says she can hear it in my voice when we talk on Sundays. I believe them both because I can feel the difference myself now. The way a room changes when you stop trying to fit inside the shape someone else made for you. The mediation will resolve the property question one way or another. My attorney says the amendment is clear. I believe her. What I keep coming back to is the table. The candles I lit. The bread I made from my mother's recipe. The moment my sister set her fork down and my mother put her hands in her lap and the furnace came on below us and I understood, finally, that some rooms are only yours if you are willing to say so out loud. If any part of this story felt like something you needed to hear, share it. Someone you know might need it more. I carried my half of that house home in a cracked manila folder and it turned out that was enough.